Hi everybody. So happy to be here to present something I've been thinking for some time, and it's kind of the idea is to think about the metaverse a bit, maybe differently than what we have been accustomed to. And yeah, before that, just a little intro. So I'm a game developer that fall into the rabbit hole of Ethereum back in 2016. And my passion, I've always been building games. So I've been building games using Ethereum since that time. But I also play with various projects, so you can see all the little things, some smaller and some bigger. And yeah, so most of them is about using the blockchain at its core. So if I do an NFT project, the SVG will be generated on-chain. If I do a game, the rule of the game will be on-chain. And that's what fascinates me, and that's kind of the topic of this. And the idea of this talk started with my realization that my vision of the metaverse didn't. There was a division in the community somewhere about what the metaverse really is. Like, is it really 3D? Is it what really matters to us, or is it something else? And so I got some replies, and then I decided to kind of, okay, let's dig into a bit more. And so one of the books that I decided to read was Snow Crash, which invented the term. And so I'll mention actually a bit about that. And yeah, this idea of foundation by Bodan Wurz. So Niraj is building, is basically doing experiment with the games around the ecosystem with Moonstream, and then Bodan is building his own on-chain game, so called Mitrium. And so I think maybe if you ask someone like, what is a metaverse, you might think of this Ready Player One as a movie where you kind of use something and you become part of the world. And maybe in reality, what you might think is actually Second Life, a kind of a place where you can meet other people. But maybe you go further in your you go further down the line and you realize actually Matrix is a representation of what the metaverse could be, whether you like it or not. But I think in this conference, you might think of something else. You might think about these three projects which add something to the previous one. Something about ownership, something about NFT, and so that's where I think the first clue that it's not so much about 3D, because we had that before, but about something else. And I think what I basically kind of go is like, what if I told you that in some way you can have this feel of metaverse without any of the 3D, because what matters to you, I mean, if you are blind in the first place, the 3D might not even be interesting to you. And it's about the feeling of being present in a world. And that's kind of, I want to see how it went to be. And so it's about, basically it's a bit a presentation about the world and the meaning of the world. And metaverse is at the edges currently. And meaning, so in this graph represents basically worlds that are still evolving at the edges. They are linked to other worlds, but not so much. And so, and there is new world being linked to them. So, for example, metaverse didn't have Web3. Now there is Web3 associated to it. And also, we see metaverse itself be an evolution. So, I mentioned Snow Crash being like the first to talk about it. But if you look further, you see other indication of the metaverse. Interestingly, the two first, like Other Plane so basically, Other Plane was the name of that plane of that metaverse by Werner Vinge and William Gibson, talking about the cyberspace. But if you look at basically the book, it's about this idea that when you connect to this world of data, your brain is gone. It's not so much the metaverse that we talk. And I think basically everything started with Snow Crash. And when you read Snow Crash, you really feel the thing we feel in Web3, this idea that, so first of all, it's interesting, he talked about protocol. So there was no Bitcoin there. There was no this idea that we could run something decentralized. And actually, to some extent, Snow Crash is a dystopian version. The version of the metaverse where Bitcoin was not invented. But also, you look down and you see that the metaverse, the 3D part, he acknowledged that this is not the important thing. The foundation is not the 3D space. And Snow Crash is all about this realization that if you had such a thing, the avatar will take a big place. And this is what the book is a lot about. The two main protagonists are actually the creator of the avatar and the technology behind them. But I mentioned there is few things that in Snow Crash that are interesting, like you have this restriction based on the hardware. The hardware seems to be very important in that world, and in some way to me it feels like, yeah, it's dystopian, because you are not in control. The person running this device, maybe they do KYC or this kind of thing, and but obviously this was before Web3 became something. And so Web3 comes, and I think what it does is this idea of NFT ownership, and they are independent of third parties. And interestingly, you see that in Snow Crash too, in some way, because in Snow Crash you assume basically that there is this protocol, there is this corporation, and if you are friends with them or you do nothing bad, they keep you enjoying what you have. And Hero, the protagonist, basically is able to buy. He was early on, so he managed to buy some land in the metaverse, and so he's feel like what some experience. But I think if you look at what the current metaverse are, they only are scratching the surface of this. They are looking at this ownership as something immutable, that you own it, that's it, it's forever yours. And yeah, you can show them off, you can run, you can go in these spaces, but these spaces are server-based, they're fully centralized. They define what movement you can do. They even can censor you. You cannot express too much yourself. And they are basically social hubs, basically where there is convention, but no rule beyond themselves. But obviously, in this case, Avatar shines, and that's the beauty of this space. So actually, to kind of experiment this myself, I decided to build, so I have an open source framework now. You can launch your little metaverse, and so I have two examples with Void Runners and Meebits, and you can basically play in a multiplayer world. But basically, the server is doing the access control, etc., using this NFT. But if you go further, where in the domain of on-chain games, you realize that you can give more tangibility to these things. You can give rules to the NFT themselves. And by restricting, funnily enough, by restricting them to have certain rules, you give them more meaning, you give them utility inside it. And it also gives them more independence, because suddenly these NFT have something to place. And there is few on-chain game in the past, a lot new now. So I mentioned I've been building on-chain game for a while, but now it's becoming a trend, and we have seen and there's different kind of category of games. So some of them are like the rules are on-chain, like Tug of War and Dark Forest, but the game have an end. So the universe stops at the point, or you can obviously launch another version and then keep track, but the connection between the two is a social rules. And there is other game like Conquest, where the game never stops. So any rule, any asset you own in that game, there is nobody that can change them. And I think you can go even further. So Conquest do that. So it's a game I'm building, and it also introduces the idea of risk. So if you want to join in that metaverse, you have to take a risk with you. And suddenly it brings in immersion. So there is an interesting article by Lars Dusse on metaverse in general, and especially on the issue of land, scarcity, etc. And in this article, he mentioned an interesting way to solve the issue with a tax. But one particular tax he mentioned is the idea of blood tax. This is basically what Conquest implement and what it means is that if you want to own something in that game, you have to fight for it. And this basically at a new level of immersion, because now part of yourself is inside the game. The money that you put in is basically become an extension of yourself. And so for me, what it means is that it means like you are basically making the metaverse independent, creating an alternative reality. Simply because if you have nothing to lose, I mean, why would you bother in the first place? Of course, winning is important, but in some way, if you don't have something to lose, you will have people that just join but never come back. And so, to me, metaverse, to go back to the beginning, like metaverse is about reality independence. And so the metaverse is the substrate on which this world lives on. So obviously, this is what blockchain offers. And if you go back to Snow Crash, the metaverse rule will be we are now living in a network of blockchains, so it will be this kind of network. And then anything built on top will be this world. And for me, the main ingredients is also blockchain gives us permissionlessness, immutability and persistence, and I will even add interoperability. And to me, the metaverse that fit this definition are the world that inherit this property. And if you lose any one of them, you are losing independence. And the fact that they offer this, to me at least, they are an invitation to build, because whatever you build on them, they are forever. They are not restrained by any third party that could decide to say, actually, I don't want your avatar in my space for whatever reason. So yeah, that's it. Any question?
You are very clear, I think.
Thank you.
Okay, great.